Gotcha. Hello, Mike. Welcome to the Edge television broadcast.
Thank you. It's great to be there.
Wow, man. We have an excellent signal from you. Video signal and audio is outstanding.
Well, I'm running from my own studio here, so I'm hoping it would be.
Okay. Well, as you can see, I'm a cowboy from America, and I don't. Y'all probably read books about us out there, but we get on horses and we ride around, rope the little doggies out there in the field, whatnot, and we take a chicken and snap that neck and whatnot. So it's a lot of fun being a cowboy. But do y'all have any cowboys out there in Angel Sea, UK?
No, we don't. We have lots of sheep, though. Lots of sheep. It's Wales.
Oh, okay. Well, we got a lot. I guess they're wanting a lot of sheep down in San Francisco, and I'm not sure what they're going to do with those sheep down there. But, well, wait a minute, I think I do. But anyway, hey, well, welcome to the program. Hey,
Thank you very much.
Hey, man, you're in for a ride. Okay, this is going to be a different kind of interview, but I'm sure you'll be all right with it when we get done with you.
All right, that's fine. That's fine. I'm game for anything.
Okay. Well, hey, thanks for staying up, Mike. Well, let's get to it. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself. What do you do, and how do you get about writing a book? Things like that.
Okay, so I've got a bit of a geeky history. I've been around for a long time in sort of nuclear defense. I started off in the defense world, and then I moved into completely the opposite. I went into broadcast. So I was director of a TV station for a while, headed up the America's Cup media back in 1995. So we did the first digital broadcast of TV on the internet back then.
Wow.
And we got ripped off as part of that for a massive amount of money.
Wow.
To a group over in Taiwan that were basically selling our content, but also selling fake merchandise and all these kind of things. So I got on a bit of a high horse and decided that I wanted to do something about it. So I invented a series of things to protect consumers online, to protect people from being either ripped off or from fraud. And one of those became the basis of the Visa 3D Secure thing. So that really annoying thing that asks you for the 3rd, 12th, and 96th digit of your passcode. That's my design. But it cut a lot of fraud. And
is that called a marker?
Sorry, say again.
Is that called a marker?
No, it's actually called 3D Secure.
Okay.
So it was the idea really being that you had something that you registered with your card issuer that was presented back to you, so you knew it was from them, and an agreement that they could ask you certain information about yourself, normally a series of numbers. So give me your 1st digit, 3rd digit, 9th digit of your passcode. And the merchant never sees any of that stuff. So in order to get it through, you had to go there. But that sort of led me into mobile security. And over here in the UK, we have a thing called the Mobile Data Association, which is all the various mobile groups working together. And the association really is the representation of the mobile industries to the UK government and also to consumers and the other bits. So for my sins, I became the chairman of that. So I headed up the association's response to things like the London Olympics and these kind of things. And in the background, I was getting more and more concerned that when I was talking about security, I was saying that we could do things on the networks that we kept being called either scaremongers or that you couldn't do it. So I ended up, one of my friends had said to me, look, you have to hit these people with a brick. Sometimes you can't be subtle. You've got to be completely upfront with them. And why don't you just build something and show them what you can do? If they're saying you can't do it, then prove to them that you can. So I built this little thing. I don't know if you can you can see it.
Okay.
So it's a $25 board in the middle, and then across the end of it, we've got 2 wireless connections on the side of it. And basically, it listens to every single piece of connection or data that goes through it. And it becomes a fake Wi-Fi hotspot. So I gave it a really, really cute logo and called it Freebie. And it runs off a battery. So I was running around with it in my backpack for a while, tidying it up, getting the connections so they work reliably and these kind of things. So one end of it was the Freebie box. The other end of it was my mobile phone. So you would be connecting to Freebie thinking it's a free Wi-Fi hotspot. And on the other end of it, it was actually talking out through my mobile phone out onto the 4G network. But of course, I'm now in the middle of all your connections. So I've got everything that is coming through that network. I ended up doing a few demonstrations of this thing. One of them at the big banking summit in London. That really freaked them out, if I'm honest, because these were the guys, there were people like Visa and other guys saying you can't do this kind of thing, and there was their data sat in front of them. So that was one of the demonstrations I'd done, and I'd also done another demonstration this time for one of the police forces in the UK, where the question had been posed to me: what information can you get from social media data, and what can you get without needing a warrant? So, in other words, could we track people? Could we find people without needing a warrant and without needing all of the bits and pieces around, because they're putting the data into the public domain? Therefore, it is public domain data. You don't need a warrant for that stuff. Mm-hmm. So I did a really, really cheeky demo. I quite like doing live stuff. So I went in and I got a Twitter stream running in the background and said, okay, we're sorting this by proximity to our venue. So these are people close to us that are going to be tweeting and doing things. So choose two, and we'll just see what we can get out of it. So out of those two, the first one we chose was a woman that was nearby in a coffee shop, and she was bored, and she actually posted out, "I'm sat here in Costa Coffee and I'm bored." And from her, that was actually a Foursquare post that she'd shared. So it was a Twitter post that was a Foursquare. We started linking these things together. That gave us her Facebook profile. Her Facebook profile gave her where she worked. We then pulled together a whole stream of information out of that, which gave us all of the various bits and pieces of information around what was happening on the system there. Oh, I've just had a light go out. And we had a whole load of data that was suddenly available to us, and we could pull that information in across all the various social networks. Mm-hmm. We ended up with her name, her mother's maiden name, her kid's name, where they went to school, where she went to work, the fact she was having a dispute at the time with Barclays Bank. We had everything that we needed, including her mobile phone number and her home phone number. She was running a business from home, so that was really easy. So I ended up being really, really cheeky. I rang her and said, "Hi, this is Mike. I'm presenting at a conference next door. Would you like to come in and see what information we can get from social media about you? We think we've got quite a lot, but we can't confirm any of it until we know what's there, or until you do." And she didn't actually say no to me. She sort of went, and that gave me long enough for me to get in and say, right, okay, we'll send somebody around. So we sent 2 police officers around. They came in and brought her in, and we confirmed all of the information that she'd given was right. It scared her in terms of the amount of information she leaked. She didn't realize she'd given so much away. So those 2 events set me off. I was doing a lot of stuff over in Singapore and Malaysia, so I was flying around all over the place, and over in the US as well, over to Silicon Valley. So I find myself in aircraft a lot, and there's not a great deal you can do in aircraft. So I just sat there with my tablet out and sat there and started writing. So the opening to the book is based around this little box, and the ability then to say, if I could connect every single computer in the world, what would I do with all of that computing power? Now, if every single device was also collecting every piece of data that was being generated, mm-hmm. then actually we end up with a bit of a problem here. The collection is really easy. So I can shove my hand out of the window, and I can, if it comes back in and it's wet, I could say, okay, it's raining outside. Most people would believe me just from that simple action. Mm-hmm. However, if you look at the bigger picture, there wasn't a cloud in the sky, and there's a guy 2 floors up with a hose pipe cleaning the windows, that I'd neglected to say, actually, the data that I gave about it being raining is fundamentally wrong. And the problem with law enforcement and with government more so than law enforcement these days, but government in particular, see things like your IP address and assume that that is you as an individual. And it's not. It's a temporary number allocated to your computer. So what we had here was me thinking, the problem isn't the collection of the data, it's what people could do with it after that it's been collected. If you had every single device around the world connected, and you had all of that spare computing resource, you could use it when people weren't using it for their own uses, then you could put yourself into a position here where you could find information instantly, you could link it, and you could put it all together. Now, I put this in as a technically correct work as well. So all of the technology that's in there is real. It does exist. The networking capabilities here allow us to go and grab any information from any source anywhere at any time. And we're able then to also search for this information and pull it back in any way. So the book really takes, it's a bit of a fictional piece, but at the same time, it's based absolutely in reality in terms of the technology, in terms of things like the forensic processes that the police apply. And I also take the readers on a bit of a journey through what can happen when a government starts to steal this information from you. What could they actually do with that data? So how do they get there? How do they get sensible results out of that information? And actually, if they can control the information that you see, but more importantly, if they can control the information about you that others see, then that starts putting you in a position where you could be accused of crimes, you could be accused of all kinds of things that weren't true. And as part and parcel of that, you get to be able to control people, and you actually start to destroy democracy. And we've seen some of this to a greater or lesser extent in the fake news, in the bits with things like the meddling with the elections and these kind of things, where people are being targeted with very specific pieces of information. I'd written this before then, but it's suddenly become in vogue. And I think that from a technology standpoint, if I can collect as a police or a government agency a huge amount of information about you, but then I can distort what you've put in there, and I can distort what you're saying, people tend to believe data. So if I am a police officer and I have collected a huge amount of data and I present it in a court of law, and I do it in a very, very nice and sort of concise way with a load of really good analytics and graphics around it, then you end up in a position where you really don't have a case that you can argue, because the data, people will believe the data. Mm-hmm. So that's really where the book comes from. Well, bit of a long-winded answer, I'm afraid.
No, that's a good answer. But I mean, I had a lot of things going in my mind as you were speaking. One, we talk about a massive collection of data. I mean, we're already looking at Facebook collecting massive amounts of data and then selling it off, and who knows what kind of manipulation. You know, in the beginning, Mike, the internet was a freewheeling thing, open for anybody to do anything, and but now it's slowly becoming 3 or 4 companies that are controlling all the information, and it's a scary thing. And you know, there's so many science fiction movies of the 80s, 90s, 2000s that show what the world will be when somebody's controlling all the information. But these tech companies are moving us right into that hell.
Well, actually, it's worse than that. Here in the UK, we're probably the most surveilled country in the world right now. We passed an act, which was the Investigatory Powers Act of 2016. And in that act, it actually says that the various internet providers, but actually broader, the communication service providers, so not just internet, every form of communication, they must store all of the communications information that about you for years and years and years. So this is the metadata about every piece of communication that you have, and this information basically puts you in a position where every single piece of information about you is stored. The CESG and GCHQ, so they're the company or the government organisations behind the sort of snooping and intelligence and all of these various agencies, have the right to be able to look at that data, and the number of agencies that can actually look at that data are frankly ridiculous here in the UK. You know, there are people like the Food Standards Agency that have been given permission to look at your internet browsing history. And the ambulance or the NHS, the health service over here, can look at your browsing history, just by the way that the Act's been put together. So here we have the mass collection of data, bulk collection of data, the ability for the government agencies to be able to link all of that stuff and put it together. But if you think that Facebook's bad, Facebook's just one of those channels, of course. So we as individuals aren't sort of sitting there and waiting for the government to collect this stuff. We are providing this information. So we're pushing it out. And we're saying to the likes of Facebook, here are all my friends, I like this brand of coffee. I'm going to go to this destination for my holiday. All these kind of things. And behind the scenes, the government are getting all of that, but across all of the social media channels and across your email and across even this type of communication right now here in the UK. I fought quite heavily against it because I didn't believe in it. And I thought this is a fundamental threat to democracy here in the UK. Unfortunately, my voice isn't strong enough as an individual, and there was a lot going on with things like Brexit and the other things around it, and the run-up to it, where people weren't that interested in data. And the government just said, well, it's only metadata. It's not stuff you need to worry about. It's the data about the data. So don't worry about it. We're fine.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you something. Right now, somebody by the name of, Tommy Robertson, is he in jail because he was simply reporting on some events in England?
You see, this one's a weird one. The English Defence League is quite an aggressive racist group over here, and Tommy really has been causing a lot of problems. He was not just reporting; he'd been asked. It was a closed court case, and he could have interfered with the outcome of that case, and it's the ability to have it as a fair case. So he was live streaming information from inside the courtroom when the judge had said no, stop, and he ignored that and carried on. So he was banged up for that. I think that the whole piece around that has been blown out of proportion, and you start looking at the political. Either side basically are shouting foul or lock him up for the rest of his life. It depends on which way you want to go.
Okay. So racists should be in jail?
Oh, no. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I think that the problem here wasn't anything to do with racism per se. It was down to the fact he ignored a judge telling him not to.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I kind of like to know a little bit more, and we'll get back to things. But is Islam a race?
No, it's a religion rather than a race, I would have thought.
Okay, so is he a racist, or is he somebody who doesn't like a particular religion, or is that the same thing?
Don't know. You'd have to ask him.
Oh. What makes him a racist? Because I'm not getting that information over here in the States.
It's down to there's a group there called the English Defence League that are against anybody other than people from England basically coming into the country, and everyone has their view. Everyone has their view. Do you allow people in or not? You've got the same battle going over in the States right now.
Mm-hmm. What from your perspective, what battle is that?
Well, I think it's just a battle around whether you want to allow people from other countries to come in and work alongside you, or to live in your communities, or whatever else is going on. As I say, I'm not. I'm sort of in the middle there.
Is it dangerous? Is it with the atmosphere of controlled information and the amount of spying, as you mentioned, England is one of the most surveilled countries in the world. Are you considering that this broadcast here, you may be surveilled as well, and they're looking for code words through an algorithm, and therefore you're holding back what you really want to say?
This will be surveilled, and it is being monitored. So there's very little doubt about that. It wouldn't necessarily stop me from what I wanted to say. I think if we could take a hypothetical thing here. If we're going to look at the data and purely the data, we could, for example, track somebody. So let's say that we want to track somebody that is causing us a problem from whatever reason, whether that's racism, whether it's financial fraud, whether it's drug peddling, whatever it happens to be. But let's say that we want to track an individual. But let's say that they're coming up from somewhere like London up to Manchester, so it's a good few hours of a drive. And we know that if they're going to get into Manchester, they're going to cause a riot when they get there, because of what they've been saying on the social media feeds and because of what they've been pushing out into the community. Now, we have the technology to be able to track them, to work out where they are, to work out who the network would be. So if they were coming up from London to Manchester, we would also be in a position to be able to say they're at that position on the motorway, or on the freeway. And we pull them over. We say, "Oh, you're speeding. Okay, there's a bit of a smell of drugs in here, so we take you back to the police station and we search you all." And by that time, a few hours have passed. By the time they finally get back out onto the road, the event in Manchester is long seen gone. Mm-hmm. So you could look at it two ways. You could say, in one way, the police in that kind of environment, if they were doing that, would be able to say that they had stopped something which they knew would be a problem from occurring. You could look at it the other way and say, well, actually, what you've done is you've distorted at that point democracy, and you've stopped people from being able to arrive at an event and to protest within the law or whatever. So you've taken a decision before they get there that they're going to be problematic. So if you look at the way that you could use data, mm-hmm. data in that kind of context says we can control what you're doing, we can control where you're going, not necessarily by preventing you from doing something you want to do, but by disrupting it enough to make it so it's no longer viable.
When, as far as the surveilling goes, the surveilling is being sold to the public as for their safety. In general, from what, again, I'm across the pond here, so my information is probably a little bit different than yours. It's probably a little bit more freewheeling and less controlled. But and therefore it could also have some non-truths or some fictions built in as well. That's part of the risk of free speech and free thought. But is it in general that they're selling, while they're selling safety, they're really going after people whose opinions varies from the state?
Yeah, and that's one of the core parts of the book, really, in that here we have the ability now to be able to search very rapidly for information and data. If you look at things like the Five Eyes, so these are the organisations that work with each other. So in those we've got Australia, we've got Canada, we've got the UK, the US, and New Zealand. So as part of your Five Eyes, they're able to share information between them, and there's nothing stopping the US, for example, surveilling somebody in the UK, and there's nothing preventing the UK, in theory, from surveilling somebody in the US. And that sort of circumvents a lot of the rules and regulations around, who's looking at what. Mm-hmm. So from again, if I pull it back purely to the data, we're able now to be able to share data at a hugely fast rate and on a massive scale. So we're able to take data from the UK and push it across to the US and ask the US to look at it, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. We're also able, even with encryption these days, I've got friends of mine who work in what's called deep packet analysis. So what they look at is whether information is likely to be within the encrypted payload that's coming through. Mm-hmm. So they could look at information in its encrypted form and say it is very likely to contain the following words. Once you start applying that level of technology into the core networks, actually you've got the ability here for any government to look at any information. And my concern, and the principle really behind the book here, is that if you are in any way taking anything away from the norm, if you're living in a way that isn't conventional, then this data can be used as a very, very powerful weapon against you.
Oh yeah, of course. Of course, it's used against, and you mentioned Facebook just a while ago. Here in the States, an Arab immigrant from Israel hacked a number of people's Facebook accounts, and then she took their accounts and started recruiting for ISIS, and she was giving out, disseminating information how to put ricin in water, which, by the way, I believe somewhere in the world today, a poison attack was stopped. I don't know what country that was, maybe in the UK, but and how to make bombs and that. But anyway, she hacked people's Facebooks and accounts. They didn't even know it. So how is it that is so easy? And it sounds like you've developed a technology to do it too. So why is it that this tech is so easy to manipulate?
The problem here is that a lot of the internet technologies were wartime technologies. And security at that point really wasn't the primary concern. It was about information sharing. So if you looked at it back then, you couldn't get onto the military net, MILNET as it was, without being in a military institution. And you had the joint academic network. So there's a thing called JANET in the UK. And you had all of these various networks that were out and about. And I think as part and parcel of that, we had in the when the networks came together, we had a whole series of things then that were brought together in such a way that the only security you really had was a username and a password. And the username and the password really isn't strong enough, so they then started bolting security on around the outside of it. And the more then that you start bolting on around the outside, the less control you have of it, and the less really you have in terms of being able to control what you're doing there.
So that little device that is actually on your book cover, is it not?
It is, yeah, it is. The device itself, it's quite a powerful tool. As I say, it will emulate any Wi-Fi hotspot. It will connect, and it will basically intercept all of the data that passes through it. It's quite a hefty little piece of kit, considering it's so small. And the thing here is that I'm not the only one that can build this type of thing. Anyone, there are hacking toolkits out there. There are all kinds of people that can build these things.
Mike Hawks, why would I want one of those?
I built it as a demonstration piece, but if I was a fraudster, and I put one of these in a hotel room, along with in a slightly less conspicuous box, with the words "alarm system, do not disconnect," at that point I can steal every connection that's going through it. So if I wanted to grab your things like your email addresses, your social media accounts, all these kind of things, then fine. The big thing here is that if you use the same passwords on everything, and you have whichever is your weakest service, so let's say for argument's sake that you've got a website that you go to, you log into it, and you use the same password on that as you do for your email or for your banking and everything else. Actually, we've got you all your accounts at that point, because we've got that one, which is the weakest single point. So big take home out of this one, if I have to go into lecture mode, is different password on every service, folks. But from a usability point of view, something like that, I don't even have to be the one that's hacking you. As far as I'm concerned, I could sell that connection across to somebody in Uganda or into Russia or into China and get a few Bitcoins back for every live connection that goes through the box. And I don't have to be in the room anymore. $25 to make it, and it's done. There are good things for it, of course. If you put it in, without all the hacking bits in, then it's a Wi-Fi hotspot, and you can use it exactly as that.
Have you guys rolled out the 5G network over there yet?
We're working on the 5G networks at the moment. It's not been rolled out yet, so we're still in 4G world. Actually, over here in Wales, most of it's still 3G.
Wow.
We're just about catching up with the world.
Okay. Well, I mean, have you studied it? Do you have any concerns about it?
On 5G, yes. It's a lot better than 4G. Which in turn is a step increase from 3G. So within the 3G world, we know that a lot of the Asian territories had turned off encryption entirely because they couldn't support it at the time. And then from this side, we've had 4G, which is a lot stronger in terms of encryption, in terms of trying to prevent people from doing impersonation and getting in. 5G is stronger again. I actually prefer using the 5G networks to the likes of Wi-Fi when I'm out and about. I can't trust public Wi-Fi at all.
Well, I couldn't trust it either. Some people say that basically we're going to get microwaved by this thing.
Yeah, it's there is obviously radiation coming out of the devices. There are studies in both directions there. When mobiles first came out, they were a lot higher powered in terms of the actual signal ratios they were throwing out. So they tended to get quite warm, and there's a lot of concern around whether or not we were microwaving ourselves or not. These days, there isn't compelling evidence either way.
Okay. By the way, Sharon Adams out of our live chat says, "Hi, Mike from South Wales."
Hello down there in the south. Yeah, it's only about 4 or 5 hours away from here. So
y'all in on it together, man. Hey, let me give you a quote here from Benjamin Franklin. It says, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." It's one of the great American quotes right there. What do you think about that quote?
I think we're giving away our safety to get our liberty online, and I think it is a dangerous thing. I think that the more that we put out into social media without considering quite who can see that or how they can link that information together, I think that becomes a very dangerous thing.
By the way, do you recognize this bridge in my background here?
I do. It's one of my shots there.
I thought you'd like that. All right. We've got some questions coming in for you. Mike Hawks from Angel C UK. This is from Azure at the YouTube chat. We got several chats going on. Should we have a federal bureau of cybersecurity? And this person goes on to say, "I hate more government, but dang, it's getting bad out there."
Well, you already have that. You've got you've got CIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, the FBI sat then, and you've got National Security Agency as well. They have a cyber division. So you've already got that. I think that the problem is here that most of the police and the governments are pretty toothless when it comes to this stuff. The hackers, I've got hacker toolkits that self-update, and they update faster than the police can react to them. And I've seen cases where we've had some of the most elegant frauds. So I've seen things where, if I can call a fraud elegant, we've taken huge scale attacks. So we've had the Russian mafia using Chinese handsets to generate traffic, to rape bank accounts, and to push money around the world in small denominations. So they'll take $100 out of a big corporate, push it into your accounts, and the first thing you're aware of it is the police are knocking down your door and saying you're part of this fraud, and you're saying, whoa, no, I'm not. Look, I've added $100 in, same day, $100 out with the words banking error. And when you look at that, the fraud setup is that you've got a Russian command and control system running Chinese handsets to give you the computing power, using Ugandan databases of compromised bank accounts. Now, how can some small police agency, say here in North Wales, actually deal with that scale of crime, particularly when the amount of money that within their view is $100. By the time they've actually pursued that, even across one boundary, so they've gone from the UK to the US, then somebody in the US has got it bounced across to somewhere in France. By the time you've got that kind of thing going on, the cost of tracking that money is more than you'll ever recover from it. So I think that the various agencies here are struggling to cope. And I also think that if I take the UK perspective, UK policing has taken a huge financial hit over the past few years. They've cut down the back office and cut down the back office and cut down the back office. They're no longer interested in long-term analysis and long-term sort of detection stuff. What they're actually saying now is that they can't afford to do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Now, actually, for a lot of the data-related issues, you've got to actually stick in there. It takes a long time sometimes to analyze full patterns, to work out networks, to work out where things are actually coming from and going to. And unless you can dedicate people with specialist knowledge and with the time, actually, that ain't going to happen. And they're normally quite expensive resources. So by the time you put all of that together, the big agencies can only really deal with the big cases. So you're into your paedophilia cases, you're into those where you've got actual harm going on, and a lot of the smaller fraud stuff just never gets picked up.
Well, I'm not sure what poison attack was stopped today, but I do know back in May, a ricin attack in Paris was stopped, and I think there was 2 men, illegal immigrants, I think they were, and one of them was named Mohammed, I believe, but that was stopped, and I would think that some of the technology was used to tack into their social media. So based on the fact that the ricin attack was stopped, and who knows how many people would have been killed if they put it in a water supply, wouldn't that make a case for the spying on the large masses to prevent that? Would that be a justification?
Yeah, it would. The problem that you've got, though, is that you have to be able to trust the information that you're being provided. And it is very, very, very easy to make mistakes with data. It is very easy. My day job is really working with analysts. We visualize data, we take it, we model it, we do all kinds of really clever stuff with it. But if we make some false assumptions at the beginning, then the whole thing is wrong. But it looks very convincing. The other one is more often than not, people, when they're handling data, will put it through something like Excel. So they'll take it in, there'll be an Excel spreadsheet. They do the same thing next month. So they just cut and paste from one to the next, from one to the next, and so on. Now, at that point, we don't know whether you're copying the values or the formulae or anything else at that point. So we end up then with bad data, bad assumptions, and it looks very, very convincing. So if we're going to do bulk data collection, actually what we need to be looking at is the integrity of the people that are capable of searching for it and investing in the skills then for those people to be able to do it. So I come back to my point about the back office staff being cut down. The specialist analysts that were capable of understanding this data don't exist anymore in a lot of these police agencies. And as a result, you're then pushing that sort of knowledge and everything else either out to consultancy and paying an absolute fortune for it.
Did you ever see the movie? Did you ever see the movie 1984?
Yeah. George Orwell.
Do you feel like we're there now?
I think we're there, but on steroids. And the reason for that is that with Big Brother, he was watching all the time, and he was collecting the data. Here, we are providing the data. I'm quoting a friend of mine there that turned around and said, the scary thing about all of this stuff is that if you'd said 10 years ago that we would be volunteering all of the information, so from the coffee that you're drinking through to your friends, through to everything else, if you'd actually been saying that you would be providing that to the government freely, you would have said, no, get off. But here we are. That's exactly what we're doing. Now, we provide it to Facebook, not the government, but the government's listening. So they're already gathering all of that. So we're no longer in George Orwell passively watching what's going on and just gathering the data in the background. We're actually actively contributing to all of this stuff.
That is absolutely right, and it's scary too, and that's why I don't put personal information on Facebook. And all day long, man, there's streams of personal information and names and places, and I'm thinking, geez, man. And so I don't really respond to people's personal things that they put up there. Whether they're, their family or whatever. I just don't. But somebody asked out of one of the chats said, why is 5G better than 4G?
It's faster. It gives you a much broader coverage in terms of the way that the algorithms operate from a cybersecurity point of view. If you look at 3G and 4G, basically we're scattering information across multiple channels concurrently, and you've got to know the time intervals in order to be able to reassemble that data accurately. With 5G, we're not only scattering it across a number of channels, but we're also scattering it across the time base as well. So we're shifting that time base. It makes it much more difficult to get hold of information out of it.
All right, and McAfee, you might catch the name there, one of our avatar listeners there, or viewers, says in the bio on this site, it says you are a defender of democracy, and it says, my question is, are you aware that James Madison roundly condemned the whole notion of democracy in Federalist Paper number 10?
I've not read that one. No.
Have you ever read the Federalist Papers?
No, I haven't.
That's a U.S. thing. Yeah. We here in the United States, we used to be a lot freer than we are now, and really, those of us that still believe in freedom over here are kind of watching Europe, and we just figure you guys are about 10 years ahead of us, maybe, and politically wise, the current administration basically slowed it down. Had the presumptive administration that was going to come in had taken over, we would already be pushed to where you guys are right now, and then there would be cameras in every corner, and there'd be a lot less freedom in this country. So I don't know how it is living over there with those cameras spying on you all the time. But let me ask you something. If a person turns off their flat screen TV, their computer and cell phone, can they still hear us or watch us?
It depends on the device. Some of them yes, some of them no. The general advice, if you want to make sure that they can't do anything at all, is disconnect them from the mains. If they haven't got power, then it's difficult to do, and take the batteries out. Depends on how paranoid you want to be. There's been a lot recently around things like the Samsung TV sets that have been capable of listening into what's going on. There was a case recently with Alexa. Where people have been emailed copies of conversations that were going on because Alexa misheard and suddenly gone into record mode and sent it as a message to friends. So there are things like that. So I'm not overly convinced that I like those services that are constantly passively listening, whether that's Alexa or Siri or any of these tools. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think, again, from a security and privacy point of view, you're only as strong as your weakest element, no matter what that is. So if you've got a really badly configured, even if it's a fridge, if it's badly configured and not secure, that's the entry point in. And from there, you can compromise everything.
There was a television show that showed somebody took the battery out of their cell phone, went around New York City or somewhere, and then put the battery back in, and then they downloaded the data, and it recorded everywhere they went without a battery.
Again, it depends on what you've got inside the device. Some of them have got smaller batteries that just maintain the status of the device after you've taken the main battery out, and they last probably for about half an hour to an hour. Gives you time to change the batteries. So it depends on the nature of the device. Some of them are really good. Some of them are just awful. I'm firmly of the opinion that we should be watching very carefully what we enable on our devices. I tend to, as I say, things like Wi-Fi and the rest, I turn off as a matter of course. I tend to have Bluetooth off, and I tend to rely more on the mobile networks than I do certainly I would Wi-Fi. But if I'm doing anything really serious, I tend to prefer being wired.
Okay. All right. Mike Hawks, we are at the top of the hour. We take a 5-minute break. We're going to take you out of the video and the audio here for about 5-6 minutes. But before we do, you say what you want about your book and how can people get Shadow Code?
Okay. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. In fact, all the various e-platforms that are there. You can get it in print copy as well. Amazon are there for that. And most of the big book chains are. I'd really appreciate it if you bought it. It is fiction, but it is based very much on real technology, and the issues it raises are very real.
Okay. All right, you can take a break now, and we're going to go to our break here. All right, everybody, you're watching and/or listening to the Edge Television broadcast. If you have any questions for tonight's guests, go to the edgeam.com website, click on the Fast Blast link, or join them in the live chat. We're going to take a 5-minute break. We'll be
Hi.
Mike. Welcome back to the program. Can you hear me now?
I can, yeah.
I want to make sure our audio's back on too as well. All right. Well, I'll tell you, we were talking about a lot of the tech things that's going on, and that little device. Let me see that. You got the device handy? Let me see that thing. All right. So you invented that. Now, is that am I going to see that on Amazon?
No, you're not. I didn't actually invent the device itself, just the things that it does. These are just $25 computer boards. You can get them now all over the place. So that's a Raspberry Pi, but there are other ones as well. So you can get them at any good hardware store. You can get them on Amazon or places like that too. Okay. So it's down to the software really that makes it, okay. not the hardware itself. All right. Well, we'll probably do a few more questions in this hour here. They've been kind of building up there. We've been talking about other things, but let's get to this one here from DC Doug. It says, Mike, how do we block our spying TVs, laptops, phones? He says, I put a sticker over my own webcam because they don't trust it. How can we stop them from spying on us? Actually, it's very difficult to do. They've made it so that the internet is so easy to use and so easy to connect to that sometimes you don't even know these things are connecting. To get yourself, if you want to go completely off grid these days, it is quite hard to do. I think that from my side, I don't allow connectivity out of my TV set, and I also lock down my router and other bits and pieces there too. So I'm really anal in that I've got firewalls running and I've got all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. So you've really got to you've got to pay attention to things like your firewall settings and your routers. Obviously, if you're on things like Windows and the like, then you've got to maintain your antivirus properly. And it depends really on what you're running and what you've got. But it's not easy. It's not easy. Yeah, they're pretty anal over there in San Francisco too. But let me ask something. In the first hour, you used the word cheeky. What is cheeky? That's a new one for me. What does that mean? Cheeky. Yeah. Sort of tongue in cheek, humorous, slightly ballsy. Okay, so I'm trying to get some culture here, man. Because being a cowboy, man, we don't get a lot. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, cheeky's just uh, humor, but at the same time, sort of a bit out there. So it's not normally what you would do. You normally find teenagers tend to be a little bit in your face with it. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. You didn't invent X-ray sunglasses, did you?
No. I wish I had.
And we have a part of this program called the Bear Report. We have who remains at an undisclosed location, and it gives us information. And today on the Bear Report, he was saying that the military has evidently some X-ray technology that they're rolling out, and so now, I mean, obviously they can watch us through our webcams and our flat screens, anything digital perhaps, but now I guess they're going to be seeing through walls, man. So even if we didn't have tech, there's still creepy spying on us.
I've seen some amazing tech recently, but one of my, I suppose one of my favorites, but also slightly freaky ones, is the cameras that can detect speech through glass, and they do it by watching your plants move. So if you've got two people talking, they're able to pick up the vibration in the leaves of people while they are talking through high-speed cameras. There was another one as well where they've used the infrared ports on the TVs in hotels to go and grab all the data. So the fact that you've got a infrared remote control, they can actually use that to go and interrogate the databases for your credit card numbers and other bits. So that's some really, really clever tech. Hackers and fraudsters certainly know what they're doing in this world.
Yeah. Okay, let's get a question. This is from Azur, the YouTube chat. There's something that's known in the Bible as the mark of the beast. Are you aware of it, and do you know of any tech that would exemplify that?
I'm not aware of any tech that would exemplify that. I think any tech that's used in a malicious way, I suppose you could bring under that title. But I think that fraudsters and the bad guys. Yeah, I think I put them under there.
Okay, alrighty. And then this one's from Sharon Adams. What browser do you recommend that are safer, more secure?
These days, Chrome and Firefox are probably the leaders there.
Firefox?
Yeah, and Chrome. Chrome's getting there these days. There's a new version about to come out, which is going to make it a lot safer.
Yeah, I was going to say if Alexa ever shows up at my doorstep, or if Amazon sends me one of these, I'm going to smash it with a hammer. There's no way I'm going to allow one of them creepy devices to be in my house.
I'm not a fan. I mean, I've played with them just to see what they can do, and from a tech point of view, it's fascinating to see the way that artificial intelligence is moving and the way that the computer systems are becoming more responsive to things like voice controls and the rest. But I'm not actually that fond of voice as a control mechanism anyway. I think it's slow and cumbersome.
Mm-hmm. And what operating system do you recommend?
I like a lot macOS and Linux. They're both based on Unix, so there's a lot more control there, and it's a lot easier to secure.
Which one?
I'm not a fan of Microsoft personally.
Mac? Did
Mac
you say
and
OS?
And Linux. Yeah, so macOS and Linux.
Okay, all right. Okay, and MR2U2 asks, do VPNs work?
Yeah, they do. Again, it depends on the quality of the encryption that you're putting in place there. So a virtual private network here, if I was going to connect from here to you, we can pre-agree a good solid piece of encryption. And everything that's going across that channel then is encrypted very nicely. But if you choose a very weak encryption system, or you go for one of the services that is one of the weaker ones, then you're going to get what you pay for, basically.
Mm-hmm. In some places in the world, I don't know if it's UK or not, but there is availability of child sex dolls, and of course the normal voluptuous woman type sex dolls already, but now getting into children's scale. Here in the United States, I believe there's been submitted a bill to ban child sex robots. This is a kind of creepy Westworld looking place that humans are creating, and it seems to be more of a sort of a cesspool. As we progress in the future, the tech is there. There's this advancing tech which could maybe at some place and point help people, perhaps hopefully maybe just in the health field. But beyond that, the tech that we're getting is changing the human idea, what it means to be human, and the moral compass that guides most of the faiths around the world and the governments and the laws are being eroded into a cornucopia of crap. So why can't we lasso this technology before AI rounds us up and kills us all? And why can't we make it work for good, Mike?
I wish we could. I wish we could. This has been a lot of my life's work has been around trying to protect people and trying to do good for people. So, in particular, stopping fraud, stopping paedophilia, stopping all kinds of hate speech and other bits and pieces online. But again, you come into this; it's a very, very fine line where some people sort of treat that as the norm. And the problem here, in some ways, is that once you start getting into social media, you can create groups of people that are now exchanging ideas that then no longer seem to be that far out of the norm, because we're now connecting people that wouldn't otherwise be able to connect. So whereas you might have had somebody that was on their own a few years ago thinking, okay, I'm the only one like this, they suddenly find a whole load of people. And at that point, you start getting a groundswell, you start getting communities building out of that. Whether you agree with them or disagree, then comes into what's legal in those countries and what is morally and I suppose ethically correct at that point as well.
There was in the movie Contact, the Matthew McConaughey character Palmer John, I think was his name. He was a priest without the. Let's see, how do you say that? He was a father without the collar. I don't know what it was, but anyway, he said that as technology progresses, has it made us better? And he's saying, and have we been able to communicate better? And he said the answer is still out there. That it's questionable that is the result.
I think I'd agree with him. I think that certainly communication is faster and easier. Whether it's better is down to the content and what we choose to do with the technology. The technology itself, it certainly has the capability to improve life and to do things, but it equally has exactly the opposite side. And for every police force or every government that puts something in place to protect us, there are those that will go out to circumvent it and do exactly the opposite. So it's as quickly as it's making things better for certain communities. So health in particular, you can now get scans that go inside the body and show everything that you need to know. You can go with the years of just having an X-ray and hoping that they pick it up through hard tissue are long gone. So one side you've got lots and lots of improvement. On the other side, I'd say we're doomed if we go down the other way with the tech as well.
I got that quote. I really think it's worth hearing. Let me read this. This is from Palmer Joss. This is the Matthew McConaughey character. He says, "Is the world fundamentally a better place because of science and technology? We shop at home. We surf the web. At the same time, we feel emptier, lonelier, and more cut off from each other than at any other time in human history."
Yeah, and there's a lot to that as well. There's a lot to that. I think that the communication, like we're communicating through this channel. If you went back even 10 years, I would have to fly out to you to be able to do this.
Yes, absolutely. And I find it amazing because the videos, there's absolutely no lag. Obviously, video is a high data stream. And I don't know where it's bouncing off a satellite going under the ocean. Who knows how many places and points it is hitting. But I'm just asking, man, is that reversed alien technology?
No. I think if we had alien technology, we would be using quantum computers and we would be able to transfer literally from here to you through the Earth without even thinking about it.
Yeah. Somebody said it's the unsocial media. Of course, there's so much danger in there. Now, you've mentioned a couple times about hate speech online, and that is a big. What happens there is, though, you have a determinate factor, some group who thinks they know more than everybody else makes the rules, and those rules really have a tendency to benefit the state and the system. And and the problem with hate speech being out there, though, once they go after the hate speech, then they're going to go after not so hate speech. That line, whatever line there is, that line keeps getting moved, and it's always moved toward a totalitarian state. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is on that, but I just don't. I think that worldwide, maybe if there could be some sort of consensus, maybe. What do you think?
I think you'll struggle to get worldwide consensus. I think that certainly from, if you take my example from earlier, the guy there that was going up to do the rally gets stopped on the motorway. Is that actually doing the right thing because they're going to come in as a hate group and cause problems, or is it doing the wrong thing because that's stopping freedom of speech and democracy? Mm-hmm. It's a very, very fine line, and the people who get to define these things are often people who don't really understand what it is that they're talking about. Mm-hmm. I mentioned right at the very beginning, here in the UK, I have heard even our defence secretaries and home secretary talking along the lines of the IP address. You know, we can get the IP address from an individual. You can't get an IP address from an individual. I haven't got an IP address. My computer has. Well, actually, it's not even that. It's the network connection temporarily has. So if you're going to draw the line between an IP address and a person, you can't do that. So for me, we've got to get people in power that actually understand the technology and what they're doing with it, instead of trying to legislate against stuff that they really have no real concept.
Mm-hmm. A question from Viam72 says, Mike, how close to real life is the tech in your book?
Very, extremely. I built the freebie box. The tech itself is based on there are two parts to it. There's the main networking stuff. All of that works right out of the box. The other side of it is there's a whole set of sort of encrypted codes that are running around, and that all exists in the tech world as well. I've been very, very careful to make sure that the tech could work and does work, and that the process that's defined in the book as well follows absolutely the right forensic processes that law enforcement agencies work and intelligence agencies use.
Mm-hmm. So when we're dealing with tech over here, there's always a battle between the government and the people, and there's this constant friction going on, but. And I'll mention the controllers, you know, who's controlling the controllers, Mike. But here in the United States, there's a lot of political debate and crap going on. But not too long ago, in 2016, the head of the FBI, a guy by the name of Comey, he was the director at FBI. He was investigating Hillary Clinton and her server, which she had in her bathroom, with 33,000 emails, and it basically says that, you know, it wasn't right and this, and that, and the other. Well, it turns out in this recent, what we call an IG, Inspector General report, which is the watchdog group of the Department of Justice, that Comey himself was using a personal email and a personal server. So this is what I'm saying. When they make rules for us, it seems that they're already violating those same rules that they want to apply to people. You know, they don't.
I mentioned earlier the here in the UK we've got the Investigatory Powers Act of 2016. This is the new act that comes in, does bulk data collection, does all the stuff with it. MPs over here are excluded from all of that, so they can't do the bulk collection against our MPs, the people in power. For me, I think if you're going to use a government service like email or messaging, then there is a requirement for audit. There is a requirement for you to be above the law, and the use of personal servers in that kind of context isn't appropriate at all. The difficulty, I guess, that you get as a politician is that you've got two different bits. You've got the bit where you've got to go out and do the campaigning to get the votes, and that's very public facing and isn't really anything to do with your day-to-day job then of running the country. So I suppose it's easy to conflict across the two. But it's a fair old challenge, and I think certainly for your politicians, if they are conducting government business, then that should be done on government servers. Full stop.
Mm-hmm. Raul Sanchez out of our YouTube chat asks, "Have you heard of computers and other tech that is in human history's past?"
Got to think about that. No, not as such. You could argue that computers have been around for a very long time in slightly different ways, whether that's mechanical or electrical, but not sort of in ancient history now.
Mm-hmm. All right, we have another question from Viam72. He says, "Mike, I hope this question is not too cheeky, but do you think things will get better or worse in the future?"
Okay, I think that certainly monitoring will get worse for us as individuals. I think that control from state is very, very much in place at the moment, and that will get worse. I think that fraud and those side of things will get worse. But I think that hopefully technology and technologists and people like myself on the tech development front can try and redress that balance a bit and bring it back the other way. Certainly control of information, control of data, it's the ability to monitor it. That's going to get a lot worse. And I think that we're going to see information sharing on a much bigger scale as time goes forward. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, well, that's really questionable.
In the movie with Tom Cruise, Minority Report, the future world there is he's walking in a mall and every store out there has a eye scanning device in it and saying, "Hello, Mr. Smith. Hey, how do you like to buy that suit? Hey, remember your look." As he's walking through, he's getting scanned, and then the advertisement is hitting him. How close to reality how far away from that reality are we?
Oh, strangely close. The number of times that you'll go and you'll be having a conversation on Messenger or something along those lines where you happen to mention a particular brand or something along those lines, you'll find that the advert for that brand comes up very quickly in your news feeds. Yeah. They're very good at pulling these things together, and they're very good at giving you an incentive as a website developer or anything else along those lines to put in the technologies that allow other companies to track your customers. Yeah. There's the old adage here that if you're getting something for free, you are the customer, and that's very, very much the case in the world of data.
I was having a conversation, and all of a sudden, an ad popped up in Facebook that had the content of that conversation. I wasn't logged on. I mean, I didn't put anything in there. I didn't do a search or anything. It was just on, and I thought. And that's happened several times. Is that even possible? Is that just?
It is. It is possible. It depends on what you've got running at the time, and there's some quite badly behaved apps that are constantly monitoring and doing that to get the advertising revenue. Yeah. The problem here is that the likes of your Facebooks and your Googles of this world will pay you as a content provider to advertise. So if you can find a way of dealing with that, then fine. That will happen. I actually dread sometimes going online if I've been doing a bit of a help case with police or with other agencies. If I have used Google and I've been searching for things that I wouldn't normally search for, the last thing I want is a load of adverts appearing in my normal day job stream.
Facebook just recently, I think they applied for a patent, or they are developing eye scan software to run through Facebook. So when you're looking at Facebook, it's looking at your eyes and seeing that's creepy. Okay. What is the matter with these bastards?
There's a lot to where you look on a page, how often you look at it, where your eye goes in images. They're trying to do a lot of work at the moment as well with trying to determine if you look at a photograph, what makes a good photograph so that they can make it more appealing. It's all about making sure that you stay engaged with their content more than anybody else's. If you can track where eyes move, it's not new research. It's been going on since the 40s and 50s around where people look. Part of it goes into the defense world, where you can then say that if you know that people don't particularly look in a specific area, you hide your assets there. If you pull it back into the advertising world, if you know where people look at first on a page, that's the area that you can charge the most for. Newspapers did it for years.
It seems some weird phenomena of our goofy cartoon known as The Simpsons over here. They have seemed like they have had future pre-programming in them. Is it possible that they just lucking into things by making
like
stuff up?
Getting Trump as president, I think it's quite freaky how they do it. I don't know how they do it.
Well, it's a lot more than Trump being president.
They do
like
seem
9/11, all kinds of stuff in there.
No, they seem pretty on the ball.
Well, I don't want them to be on the ball. I don't want to get the future prophecies from a goofy cartoon like that.
No, nor do I, but they seem surprisingly good at it.
So now, London has more cameras than any city. Is that right?
It is, yeah.
Now, where you live, are there cameras there too?
Oh no, I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, great. All right, so you're kind of away from that crap.
Oh yeah. I live literally in the middle of the open countryside here, so you can see part of it there. There's not a lot there, and yeah, it's. I think for most of the cities, we're getting into a huge surveillance area now. So you can't move in the cities without being seen. What we're starting to get in there as well is the facial recognition technology, so that but they're extending all of that out, so that taking things like the essential measurements of your arms and legs, and being able then to say that that particular set of characteristics when you're walking means that even if they can't see your face, they can still track you through crowds. And that kind of technology has been around now for the past, well, I'd say about 10 years or so, but it's now getting quite mature and getting quite good at what it's doing. The other part of what I've seen there is that if you're in an airport, the odds are that you will move in a particular way. So you'll go to whichever gate in a particular way. You'll travel through the airport through particular channels. And if you step outside of those, then you're a person of interest immediately, because you're now doing a movement which isn't the norm. So you come back into this whole thing around data shaping what is normal. And if you're anywhere on the fringes of that, then you're instantly not normal and something to be watched. And that, I think, is the big message from all data, that no matter how it applies, anything around the edges, you're up to something, or you've got to be watched.
Well, Mike, I go out of my way not to be normal.
So do I.
Look, man, when I go to a federal park, they say, well, here's a trail for you. Walk down that trail. I say, hell no, I'm walking down my own trail. You know what I mean? Because they want to herd you, and that's kind of how, and it's interesting the way you frame that is if you do anything that's out of the specification of good, what a government deems as a good citizen, which really is somebody who facilitates the government itself, and so, I don't want to live in that kind of controlled world like that. But let me ask you something. Are we trying to use technology instead of trying to address the root problem of why we need that spy technology, why we need cameras in every corner and in every bathroom in London? Why don't we get to the point to address why we need that and work on the root cause? Because there's not enough cameras anywhere, and there's not enough police anywhere to stop crimes from happening. There's something about the human soul that is getting darker, and they're trying to use technology to try to keep us safer from the dark soul. But I'm just saying, I'm pretty sure London was a pretty safe place 50 years ago, and everybody wanted to go there and see Big Ben and all kinds of other stuff. Especially the guy with the funny hats, those guys with the 5-foot hats. I wanted to see that, yeah. But I'll tell you what, I'm never going to go to London ever. They're not going to convince me that, the gun laws they had to put in place, now the anti-sword laws they put in place, and now it's the acid in your face capital of the world. I'm not going to go there. But why don't we deal with the dark part of the human soul? What is going on with that?
I think we're into, back to my point earlier around, we're stripping all the money out of the conventional policing. We're not in a position anymore to do conventional policing. So we've got a position here in the UK now where, unless they can solve it within a few hours, they don't tend to bother anymore. So they'll close things like mugging cases where people are having stuff stolen on the street and the rest of it. They'll close it down. I could argue either way here with encryption. Encryption is giving us a better level of privacy, and is making the job more difficult for police to just sit back in an office and look at the digital footprint. They're actually having to get back out again and do real policing, if I put that in quotation marks. The problem with that is they haven't got enough time to do that, and they haven't got enough people anymore. Certainly here in the UK, we've lost thousands and thousands and thousands of police officers. Yeah. So if you went back to London in you said 50 years ago, you would find there lots of officers walking the streets. You'd find other officers that are then able to deal with queries and all kinds of things, for even with people who are getting lost, this kind of thing. Nowadays they can't do that. There just aren't the resources to do that, and I think that's a real challenge. So if you combine that then with the bit where social media allows these dark groups to get together and for things to amplify, you go through these circles where things get bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you can't detect these early enough, then they get to a point where they become a real problem.
There's a headline in I guess it's a news magazine over in London called The Sun. Is that right?
Yeah. Okay.
Is that a rag, or what is that?
It's a bit of a rag. It's one of the trash papers.
Okay.
Yeah. To take what they say and consider about 80% of it sensationalism.
Okay. One of their headlines was, and see if you would argue with this point. It says London is the acid capital of the world. There's areas where drivers won't go because there's so many attacks. again, you
No.
really didn't address
No.
you really didn't
No,
address.
I don't. London's a fair trip out for me. It takes about 4 hours to get down there for me. But I still go there, and I've never considered myself at risk in London in that kind of way. I don't think I'd walk down the street with my hand, an expensive phone in my hand or something along those lines, because you're asking for somebody to go past and just swipe it as they go. But I think, in real terms, I don't think I'd be concerned about acid in my face.
Well, I don't think anybody wants to suffer from that. But again, I would suspect 25 years ago there was no such thing as acid being thrown in people's faces in any. Well, I can't say any capital city, but at least not in Western Europe. There wasn't any such a thing. There was sweet Venice, and there was now you've got 6-foot concrete barricades around the Eiffel Tower. It's a prison continent as far as I can see. I mean, it probably looks different from where you are, but that wasn't my question. My question was, again, why can't the world address the human issue that's causing a massive police surveillance state?
I think that requires people to actually become aware of it, and it requires people to stand up and do something about it. My book is very much a warning of the consequences of that, and that's where it's headed. Here is something which controls you absolutely, and here is something that you have no control over. And I think that the more we allow the data to drive everything, the greater the risk of that. There is. This is a human problem, and it requires a human touch. It's not something we can do through computers and technology.
Mm-hmm. Should we have any fear from AI?
Yeah, we should. I think that some AI is really good. Some of it, I think, again, we would put a huge amount of credibility and credence into AI. We'd expect it to do the right thing. The classics here are things along the lines of you've got an autonomous vehicle driving along the road. It could crash into the oncoming vehicle and kill one occupant in there, or it could drive into the sidewalk and kill 4, but avoiding the damage to the vehicle. Which way does it go? How does it make the decision? There are so many cases here where AI is a learning engine. And it just has to have so many examples in order to understand what it's got to do, that if you don't feed it the right examples, it will never actually have the right result. But somehow, because it's data, we'll trust it. Conversely, I think that properly engineered AI is a great thing. So things that are able to, for example, detect cancers, to be able to detect medical conditions extremely quickly and more reliably than it can a GP. That, for me, is a great use of AI. I think that there's a lot there to be concerned with, and I think that we have to look at it was Asimov's principles there, saying that AI is great, but it can't. You have to have the fundamental principle there of robotics that you do no harm.
Well, in the movie The Matrix, AI took a look at humans and decided that humans were like a virus spreading across the world using the resources, and I really can't argue with that so much. But isn't that a logical conclusion in the end when we put in super quantum computers, D-wave computers, and tell them to take over the world? They're going to be. It don't sound good for the human race.
No, we would have to adapt a lot. I think
we'd have to adapt to it.
Yeah, I think. Well, we already are. We're adapting to AI as it goes along. You see that in language, and you see that technology has completely changed the way we communicate. Even 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I wouldn't have considered sending smiley faces to people as part of a normal communication. And yet earlier, when we were just even at the beginning of the chat, I think I sent you a wink or a smile or something as part of an emoticon. There's just no way I would have done that years ago. So if you look at the way that text messaging, I saw a great example of how text messages, the humble text message has completely transformed life in some of the nomadic regions of Africa. They don't understand the English character set, but A is come home, B is check the herd, AB, combine means bring the herd to me. So you look at this kind of thing. The technology has transformed the way they're capable of working. So in that sort of side of things, technology has been really useful. It's been a very powerful tool. On the other side, I think that humanity has to start assuming some responsibility, but we can't leave it to the politicians of this world. It's up to you and I to understand quite what we're leaking from a data point of view, and also who else has access to that and what they can do with it.
Many times on this program, the guests that I have on the program will stretch my parameters of view. And I see a question popped in that's maybe doing that for both of us. So why don't I go ahead and give it to you? This is from a floor worker at a YouTube chat. It says, Mike, do you think it's possible to convert AI to Christianity?
It depends on your definition of Christianity. You would be able certainly to teach AI Christianity, whether or not you would then be, philosophical arguments, if I can say it, and the like, might be a bit of a challenge. But you could certainly teach it. I don't know whether conversion per se is something that you'd be able to do.
Well, I would think at least some of the tenets, hopefully you'd be able to teach, which seems like they would go across all faiths, like you should not kill, you should not steal. I mean, why wouldn't anybody, atheist or not, agree to those basic tenets? And certainly they should be wired in specifically to the AI, that you shall not kill, meaning AI, you shall not kill humans. That should be like the prime directive, man. But I'm not sure they're building that reserve in there.
Asimov's rules of robotics, they're a good basis for that, and one of those is that you shan't harm or kill a human. But that sort of gets compromised again when we start looking back at the automated car. And which one does it take out? The people in the car, the people on the sidewalk.
Well, by the way, it's strange you mentioned that synchronicity, because I think today somewhere in the United States, a Tesla blew up somewhere. And there's been autonomous deaths occurring here too as well. They're trying to get those driverless vehicles on the road. And I tell you what, we have this monster thing called Amazon over here, Mike. And I tell you what, man, I'm prophesying that our skies are going to be filled with Amazon drones delivering packages everywhere. That's a nightmare. I already got to look up the chemtrails. I don't want to see a bunch of damn Amazon drones, but that's our future. I mean, are they going to bring them over to you guys too as well? Yeah,
we've seen some trials over here for them as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, would you like to see an Amazon drone or a bird?
It's progress, I guess, if you can call it that. I'm not convinced I like it.
Well, I'll tell you what, my AR-15 ain't gonna like it very well. Listen, so yeah, man, I don't want to see the skies filled with that stuff. I don't think that's advancing technology one bit, and I don't know why they would have rights to access to block out my view of the sky.
No, I don't either. I think we're going to see flying vehicles. We've started seeing flying vehicles already in prototype form. They say these are going to be the taxis of the future. And to me, all that's going to do is increase the levels of congestion. We're now going to have congestion above us, around us, and across the streets as well. It's just the way of the world. Unfortunately, it's going to move forward. No doubt, people were saying the same things about the Ford motor car when it came out.
Well, I guess you could. That's a good point there. But man, that gets also to the point that at some point we need to go out into a forest instead of an Apple computer shop.
That's exactly why I moved here. I moved out of the metropolis into somewhere which is, I've got a beach I can walk on and some beautiful headlands around here. So it's a really, really beautiful area.
Well, I guess I'm kind of at the point where I'm looking at resisting technology. I nearly deleted my Facebook account when I saw the scam of the compilation of data that Facebook was giving to everybody and their mother. And they just got caught, and I'm sure they're still doing it, and I'm sure Google's doing it, and they're all doing it. And so, I think it's there. At some point, I may pull the plug on that kind of thing. I mean, they've got us all trained to use tech and try to create a utopian world, but it goes back to that quote I read earlier, that we're also more disconnected, when you don't, like you say about the little the avatar, you know, the smiley face and such, you know, when people used to say hi. And I think in schools now, the kids don't even they're not even learning to write. I think they just say, as long as you can type it on the keyboard, you don't need to write. So I don't know. I guess you could say it's progress, but maybe it's not.
Yeah, I have problems with people. I actually had a CV sent to me, and it was entirely in text speak, the whole thing. And I'm in the communications industry here. I like people that can communicate effectively and can actually present themselves well. And I sort of looked at this and I thought, well, you know, I'll be fair. I'll send back, not at the moment, thank you. But because of the way that you've written your CV, if you send it back to me, I'll reconsider it. But you have to write it in English, not in text speak. Because I wanted to be able to have people that can communicate effectively. So I thought I'll be fair if nothing else. And I got no response back. So I obviously decided it was too much effort. Mm-hmm. But for me, perhaps you and I are just in the old world where writing matters and grammar and punctuation matters.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like I say, I pride myself in being sort of an anarchist in my own right. I'm apolitical. I don't. I don't want to be affiliated. I like nature. I just don't. And tech it just seems to I use it a little as possible, but there's still a lot of ways to go to reverse, because really we didn't know where it would lead us. But I think your book and other sources are beginning to show us a future that, it's not going to be this utopian that's being promised through tech. It's going to be like a controlled world. Like I said, they're not dealing with the human heart. They're trying to use tech to make everybody safe, which can't be. All it's doing is making us all of our lives being available for spying from our own government. I don't like that world right there. So, I've got a little resistance going on over here. In fact, every sci-fi movie, Mike, if you look when they project in the future, there's always this little core of agitators that resist the state. And, they're usually shown as the heroes. At first, they're maybe presented as, terrorists and stuff, and there's a lot of movies like that. I feel like I'm kind of in that group, the resistors. But, in American history, very few resistors caused America to be free, where the rest of the country did not want to be free. And, where I'm going with that. So would you consider yourself part of the tech resistance?
I think I've become that. I never set out to be, but I've certainly, over the past few years, I found myself objecting an awful lot to what the state is trying to do and what the government's trying to do over here. I certainly stood up and I actually went and had a meeting with the chair of the committee that was drafting the law for bulk data collection, saying this is fundamentally wrong, and trying to get them to see what the issues were with the abuse of data. The Shadow Code book came about in part because I had been approached by intelligence agencies saying, that little box you've got, we'd really like to get our hands on that. And it's one of those where I spent years trying to stop people from doing the interception. The purpose of the box was to show that these things could be intercepted and that they could be broken in. So for me, I wasn't interested in selling the box. I was interested in trying to protect people from what the box could do. And somehow that sort of got lost somewhere. So I had a choice then of sell my soul out to the intelligence agencies and sell loads of these little boxes. But then at that point we're just increasing surveillance and becoming even more controlled. Or at that point I wouldn't have been able to write about it or sit down and write about it. And I could have done it as a textbook in terms of how to protect yourself. And I think it would have been a very dry and quite boring text. And I hope that by putting it into fiction and actually putting it there as this is what can happen and is happening, but basing it on real tech, hopefully that twist has got something there which people enjoy more.
In your book, Shadow Code, can you tell us what's one of the more bizarre sort of predictions or stories that you have in there?
I think the bizarre parts here are the way that the intelligence agencies can zoom in within a few seconds of determining that you are something at risk. We had a case where somebody had gone completely off grid, so they thought, And we were able. It was actually reported. I think it was in the New York Times eventually that reported it. They'd posted a series of anonymous comments against a particular news feed, and it took less than 30 seconds before the New York Times reporter had rung them up and said, "Hey, you know this thing you've just posted anonymously?"
Wow.
So that they thought they'd put everything in place to try and protect them. And I think that from the book's point of view, I show how that can be done with a credit card payment on. They've gone off grid. They've taken themselves so that they can hide, but they've been provided with a specific credit card, and that credit card is the key to them being tracked literally down to within a couple of meters of where the computer is.
Yeah, interestingly enough, the things that are going on in Washington D.C. here, one of the president's ex-lawyers had shredded a bunch of documents. But the FBI was able to reassemble those 750 documents. Reassemble. Now, how is it that they can reassemble shredded documents? Would that be a computer? Would it be a guy just standing there at a desk trying to make everything fit?
Oh, it'd be a computer. Scan them all into a computer and let it do it. Yeah. You see, that's where your AI comes in, because it knows what a word looks like. It knows what a sentence or a paragraph looks like. So in that kind of area, it'll be really good at pattern matching and saying that's a bit of that, that's a bit of that.
Well, that shows you so much for thinking you're safe when you're shredding documents, man.
Yeah.
That's got to be so old school now. You're going to have to incinerate them, but who knows, man? Maybe they'll snatch the vapors out of the sky and reassemble those.
Yeah, but they can certainly get it out of your rubbish and do it that way. You trash American.
Well, my view is that tech is good as long as the people that are running it are good. I feel like it's a pillar. They have to have a sense of morality. They have to have a sense of right and wrong, of goodness, of decency. I'm afraid that the majority do not have such a thing. They are just sort of like drones in them themselves. There's no right or wrong in their world. There's just tech and, advancing a cause or something, and whatever it takes to do that. Those are definitely the wrong people to be in charge of data or tech of any kind. Michael Hawks, we are at the end of the broadcast here. Tell the folks about your book and how to get it.
Okay, once again, you can get it from Amazon. You can get it from all of the main online stores as well. So over in the States, it's Barnes & Noble over there as well, so you can get it on your Nook. It's available in print form from all leading book retailers. So the likes of Waterstones over here in the UK. I think Paperchase is the big one in the States, I think. So you can get them through those. Just get it, and I hope you enjoy it.
Okay. Well, I certainly recommend getting that book too. And Mike, I appreciate you so much for staying up so late to do this interview for us tonight.
You're welcome. It's been a while since I've been up at nearly 3 a.m. here now.
All right, man. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to find me a place that looks like where you're living, man. And I'm moving out.
Seriously, it's beautiful. You should.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mike.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, everybody. That was Mike Hawks here on the Edge television broadcast, all the way from Anglesey, UK, Wales. This program will begin to replay in the main player directly after the show, and then we'll update our guest website, guest part of it as well. We'll put it into our YouTube channel, and we'll extract the audio, and we'll put that into our TuneIn playlist. Of course, we'll also put a podcast on there and an audio link for you as well. If we haven't had a guest on the program, let us know at edgeam@yahoo.com. Thank you, everyone, for your great questions tonight and participating with the program. Daniel Ott for The Edge. Bye-bye.